Right now, the language of work is ambiguous, and we are all drowning in a sea of ASAPs. Everybody has get me that ASAP, get me that ASAP, get me that ASAP. And then I go, well, John, he's hierarchically higher than Bill. So I'm going to get John's first, and his ASAP is more important. So then you put out ASAP, and then you're like, when are they going to get it to me? When are they going to get it to me? Well, you said ASAP. So how do you know when they're going to get it to you? You haven't told them when you need it.
Right.
So the most important thing to shift work communication where people feel more, they can plan and they can deliver, is to always say, this is what I need and this is when I need it.
Is your firm's efficiency still being judged by hours logged? Are your firm's flexibility policies still resulting in micromanagement and long hours? How can we get out of this paradigm of management by clock? This week, our guest, Jody Thompson, is the founder of CultureRx and the creator of the ResultsOnly work environment, or ROWE, a management strategy anchored in 100% accountability and 100% autonomy for employees. This is going to be a shift in your mindset of how you work with your employees and how we get the most out of them. Ultimately, results are all that matter, and you'll be managing the work, not the people, and definitely not their time. Jody has a fantastic outlook on how we should measure our employees' successes, and ultimately why hours worked shouldn't be a badge of honor, especially if they aren't helping us deliver on the company's goals. We'll discuss ways to start implementing this in your firm by getting buy-in from employees. We're going to tie employee outcomes to the purpose of our company. I'm really excited to share this episode with you, so let's start the show. I'm John Strohmeyer, and this is the 5-Star Counsel Podcast. The market for legal services is shifting, and lawyers who don't adapt will be left behind. This podcast gives you a competitive edge in today's market by sharing the client service lessons you probably didn't learn in law school or in law practice. Let's start the show. Hey 5-Star listeners, before we start, I want to tell you about our amazing sponsor, Smith AI. Smith AI is a virtual receptionist service for small businesses with a specialty in working with solo and small law firms. I signed up with them within weeks of starting my firm because they are affordable for even the smallest solo practice. Their friendly receptionists respond to potential clients in Spanish or English, screen and schedule new leads, and can even take payments. And now they're answering calls 24 hours a day. So even when you're asleep, they're still working. Even beyond the phone, they've got live agents and chatbots ready to capture leads on your website, by text, and by Facebook Messenger. Smith's friendly gatekeepers can staff your front line so you can work uninterrupted. You can finally have the peace of mind that while you're working, you're not missing out on future work. Plans start at just $70 a month for calls and $100 a month for chats. Smith AI is offering a free trial, and our podcast listeners get an extra $100 discount code with promo code 5-STAR. That's FIVESTAR. Sign up and learn more at www.smith.ai. Don't let another day go by. Try Smith AI. Hey, Jody, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's great to be here, John. I'm glad we're having this discussion. This will be fun.
Oh, I'm looking forward to this. What we're talking about today is a mind shift in how we work with our employees and how we get results from them. And in a lot of ways, it's less of a revolution unless you want to think about it as going back to the way things probably always were. Because if you think back probably 500 years ago, people didn't get paid for anything other than results. Because nobody had a clock. Well, they may have had clocks, but even if they did, people weren't necessarily getting paid for time. It's how much work did you do?
I think there was a sundial back then.
Right. Which means that there was less productivity in the winter than there was in the summer. And if you were a farmer, it didn't really matter because the crops only came in once or twice a year. But rather than have me kind of blubber around with describing the topic that you wrote the book on, I'm going to let you just kind of introduce what the results-only work environment is and what we need to start thinking about.
Yep, I can do that. And, I liked when you said at the beginning, you talked about revolution. And when we started thinking about this idea, over 15 years ago, we said it's not really a revolution, it's an evolution. And it's time for us to start evolving out of the industrial age mindset of how we think about work. what we learned over 15 years ago, it was about in 2004, is that organizations were trying to create a situation where people could feel like they had work-life balance. But what we uncovered is flexibility does not give people work-life balance. It doesn't give people what they really want, which is control, complete control over their time. Flexible work schedules give managers more control over people's time, not people more control over their time. So we started an experiment, which was very interesting. It was an innovation experiment to see if giving people complete control over their time and at the same time holding them accountable to measurable results, what that would look like. So it's a platform of 100% autonomy and 100% accountability for every single person. Well, guess what we learned? Managers were going, well, how am I going to know if people are doing their work if I can't see them? And we're like, well, how do you know now? Like, that is the problem right there. And so we started experimenting with this idea and creating the ResultsOnly work environment, which is a platform of autonomy and accountability. It sounds easy. It's not easy. We have deeply held beliefs about the way work needs to happen, and to break out of that belief system, like, people collaborate better when they're face-to-face, to break out of some of those orthodoxies, we have to really rewire our brains and have a completely different mindset. So our organization, CultureRx, was formed to help companies with the practice of a results-only work environment. A lot of people read our book, right, Why Work Sucks and How to Fix It, and they're like, yeah, I get it. I'm going to do some of that stuff, but it's not really the whole shebang, right? To really shepherd this into an organization, there's a lot of adaptive change management tools that have to be in place to help people overcome inertia. So that's what we've been doing for a long time. Have had a lot of success. I've been refining it. Lots of research. National Institutes of Health, 8-year research study on this shows that it definitely, helps people's health and well-being to be in this kind of environment. And when employees are having better health and well-being, they're better workers. So there's just a lot about this that is changing the game in how we manage. We always like to say, manage the work, not the people. Manage the work, not the people.
And there's a lot in there. I want to start, you said 15 years ago, but Jody, the millennials had not started working 15 years ago. Clearly, nobody was concerned about work-life balance 15 years ago.
It's funny to think back, way back then, isn't it? People were starting to talk about that. Yep.
Yeah. And so, really the idea and the short point is this has always been how can we make it better for everybody? It's not just how do we make it easier for the manager? It's how do we help our employees get what they need to get done? Correct. And also, how can we make sure that they know what they're doing is right?
Well, yes. You have when you have the two sides, that accountability piece is people today are accountable to the time clock, first and foremost. Even if you're a knowledge worker, we all have that DNA of the time clock inside of us. And we talk about how long we work and how hard we work. And it's like our badge of honor. It's like, well, how many hours did you work last week? Oh, I worked 60 hours last week. I worked all weekend. And we carry that around with us. We're really not talking about the work. We're talking about how hard I'm working so that I look like a better worker than somebody else. And this has been going on for a long time. So that whole idea of work-life balance, people are trying to push back on that. And what we're trying to create today, or what organizations are trying to create, is equity. But they're not getting there because they're doing the hybrid workplace and, the 4-day work week, which came about in the 70s. It's not new. It's not innovative.
Right.
They're still controlling people's time and location, which doesn't give us a platform of equity where we all are standing on the same thing, which is Every single person gets to choose every day the best place to get their job done in concert with others. If I'm a retail worker, guess where I have to be? In the freaking store.
Right.
So people need to choose the best location. And if they choose the wrong location, then it's a performance issue. You didn't do your job. But we don't look at that. We say, oh, well, you worked 50 hours last week, so you didn't get that done. So you didn't turn in the deliverable. So you didn't service the customer. That's okay. You put in 50 hours. That's got to stop.
Right. And the thing is, clients come to lawyers and, for our doctors and dentists and CPAs and engineer client listeners, they're coming to us for ultimately a result. They don't really care much of how long it took us to deliver that result. Frankly, they'd probably, if I went to the dentist and I can be in and out in 5 minutes once every 3 years, that would be just as good.
Yes.
But the reality is they know I need to show up in their location and sit in a chair because it's got all the tools in one place. It's just easier that way. But when we bring it back to lawyers, a lot of what we're doing doesn't require us to be physically proximate to each other. And ultimately, the clients are looking for some sort of result for us. So when we take that and disconnect it from the results that we're trying to deliver for our clients and disconnect that from the work that's being done internally, we're creating these different mix-ups and it's causing the problems. For one, the billable hour where we have no idea what we're doing. And it's one of the things that, as a firm owner, I've tried, there are a few things where I just can't get away from the billable hour for reasons beyond my control. But most of my projects at this point are flat feed. And it helps because the clients know when I get paid. And then on the flip side, well, we have deliverables we meet for the clients. We're then going to break it into, these are the deliverables for the employees of what they're expected to do, and then kind of setting out the tasks for them for that client work. So is that at least on the path towards ROWE?
You're getting there. We call that value-based pricing.
Right.
And what's interesting when I think about that, I have an attorney that I deal with for the business, and the way that I want to interact with you as an attorney is I want to know, like you just said, what is the outcome we're driving towards? Like, what is it I need from you? And just how much is that? Like, what does it cost me? What do I need to pay to get that value that I'm asking you for? But from a customer perspective, if I'm like, well, if I send an email, that's 15 minutes. And if I talk to you on the phone for 5 minutes, that's a half an hour. And then I get this laundry list of activities on my bill, which to me arrests me from wanting to reach out to you to get to the outcome. So there's this push and pull happening. And so when you're moving towards the idea that the value of the service you're providing me is what I'm paying for, then you can stop doing activities to, fill in on the invoice to make me look like you're working on my behalf. I know you're working on my behalf, right? So we worked with an accounting firm, and after 3 years of being in a results-only work environment, they went from hourly billing to value-based billing with their clients. And you probably know this, John, it takes a while because you're kind of training the client too.
Right.
Because they're used to paying by the hour for accountants and legal fees and all of that. So you kind of have to train them to say, little by little, like, what we're doing for you is we're spending time working, but we're really working to get to your results. So we're going to be as efficient and effective as we can, but this is the fee.
Right.
So that's where professional services firms like yourself need to start moving into the future, into the more contemporary way of thinking of interfacing with the client today.
Right.
So you're on the right path.
Right. Because clients don't care how long it takes. They're looking at that result. And you're exactly right in terms of, well, getting the list of efforts we did on your behalf. Well, would you have had 17 phone calls with your attorney if you really only needed one and it got the job done? And, why were you calling them however many times? Maybe you did need that. And it doesn't mean that you don't
need all of that work, but you build in that value of we're available for when you have calls. I mean, looking at my day to day, I had a client who scheduled a call with me on Friday to talk about something. And because we're on value-based billing, my goal is to get him through the process as quickly as possible. I told my associate to call him today. We're not going to bill him anymore for him not waiting. He may not be available, but what he'll see is we reached out. The goal is to get him answers and to get him through the process. My associate sat in on all the meetings. If she doesn't know something, she knows enough to say, I don't know, let me ask John. And he's getting the benefit of, oh, we're going to get this faster. The real bonus is if my associate can answer his question now, I get that 15 minutes back on Friday.
Correct. I mean, I think the whole thing we're talking about is there's efficiencies on both sides, and the customer sees the efficiency, and they actually build a more trusting relationship with you and your associates if there's just sort of an honest, this is the investment for the service we provide, and we will do whatever it takes to get there. And I think what's important too is when I'm talking about this sort of thing and people say, well, it takes a lot of time to get work done and whatever, but there's always deliverables. There's always dates that you're trying to hit in any project. So those are the things that are important. And sometimes it takes you an hour to do something, and sometimes it takes you 5, but you still have to get to the outcome. So when people are in this mindset where they don't have to fill time, right? They don't have to, talk about how many hours they work, and they don't have to fill that whole day up with stuff. They start to get really good about making each thing that they do more effective, more productive, better. They take process stuff out of process that's kind of redundant or irrelevant. And when you own all of your time, you don't want to waste it.
Right.
You don't want anybody else to waste it, and you don't want to waste it. So it's better for you. It's better for the business, community, customers, for everybody, if we have that freedom to not be tied to the notion that the clock tells us whether or not we're effective workers. The clock.
Right. Mm-hmm. So Jody, then what does this look like on the inside? Once you've switched over, are we just, do we have basically an internal price sheet? You've done this, so you get that?
I think that yes, you could have an internal price sheet. That's one way to do it, because then it's just really clear to everybody that your service costs this for this type of thing. That's a great place to start. It's interesting, I think, too, is you have to have not only that mindset to deal with your customers that way, but you have to treat your own people inside the same way. So for that whole time or that clocking thing, if people inside the organization feel like they're being held accountable to the clock, it's harder for them not to hold others accountable to the clock. It's a very weird thing. So I can't feel like I'm being measured by what time I come in and what time I leave. And I can't feel like I'm being judged on things like leaving early or coming in later. If the work is getting done, the work is getting done. What does early and late mean?
Right. Nobody has to show up and, more importantly, show off by having their car at 6:30 in the morning in the parking lot, or showing off by having their car there at 8 o'clock at night. You're
Correct.
there to get things done, and maybe you're not there at all because you're getting it done elsewhere.
Right. I think it's an interesting thing, too, to think about that idea that we have labels on people like remote worker or teleworker or, working from home worker. It's just work. It's just work. And so when we talk about work location with people, we're separating them by a belief system. Oh, those people that work from home, they're just doing their laundry. But the people in the office, they're the ones that are the most dedicated. I can see them working, but I can't see you working. And we feel like we have to manage remote workers, whatever that means, remote workers differently. No, we don't. If you're clear with people about the results they need to achieve, it doesn't matter what location they're in. You need to manage the work with them. Watch the work and let go of the old cues from the 20th century of, well, if you're in meetings and you're sitting in a cube and you're clocking in, that you're actually working. Just because you're at an office doesn't mean you're working.
Right. Thinking every year, I think ESPN has a button on their website during March Madness that's, if the boss button, you can watch all of the games, but if you need to hide it with a fake spreadsheet, here's the button.
That is so silly. It's just so silly. I remember games we used to play long ago when I was at Best Buy, and we would leave our coats on our chairs, but then go home, but make it look like we were still on campus, right? In those kind of games. And same thing with the button. It's like, if people are getting their work done, who cares? But the thing is we're not really clear if people are getting their work done, because we haven't gotten clear on that with people. And so it feels very uncomfortable if you're supposed to be working from 8 to 5 and all of a sudden you're watching the game, because we don't have the right cues of, is the work getting done? That's why we care about that other stuff.
So that begs the question, well, how do we get clear? What does getting clear with people on tasks look like?
Well, first of all, we like to think of it as backwards planning. So things like SMART goals get people wrapped up in tasks. And you can do a lot of tasks and check them off your task list, but it doesn't mean it's the right work. We have to start with the outcome. What are we trying to achieve for the customer? And then backwards plan into, what are the things I can do in my role that are going to affect that? And how am I going to measure that? Now, here's something that's interesting to think about. That's not the manager's job. It's everybody's job. So rather than think about, I as a manager have to figure this out for all the people, why aren't I asking them to figure it out with me? So we have to tie everybody first to the outcome of the organization. And if your readers or your listeners have read the book Drive by Dan Pink, he talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Give me the autonomy, help me master my job, but tie me to the purpose so that I feel like the things that I do actually have meaning. And that is what drives people to be intrinsically motivated to do good work for you. But I'll tell you this, if you're a clock watcher and you're saying, gee, you picked up your daughter from school last week, do you really have to leave early again this week? That kills everything. That just destroys engagement. To monitor people and treat them like children, really.
Right, because you've got to be here, and the only place you could get the right efforts done is with you being under my watchful eye, because I've got the bandwidth to do your work and my work, or watch you doing your work while I get my work done, probably on the other side of an office door.
Right. And what do you think about the whole spyware thing now? That's becoming really big. What are you spying on? Right? You're trying to see the cues of work. I want to see that person sitting in a home office with a computer, clackety-clacketing away. They look like they're working, so therefore I feel like work must be happening. So instead of watching the right things, which is deliverables and outcomes, I'm looking at tasks, like you said, or just behaviors of people. And think about how people feel. That's why they want to work outside the office. The micromanaging is killing people.
Right. It's a lack of trusting. And going back to something you said earlier, we're treating our employees the same way we'd want to treat our clients. We're trusting them to do the right thing, and we're not getting in the way of it. Nobody, we wouldn't put trackers on our clients, and we'd probably bristle at our clients putting trackers of some sort on us. Just come in, get the things done, and trust that we'll arrange it as efficiently as possible to do it.
Right. And you know how trust builds? Do what you say you're going to do.
Right.
That's how you start trusting people. Where we lose trust is when we ask somebody for something. A client asks you, you ask a coworker, and the person just ignores it or doesn't help you with it. And so we're always trying to say, how do we build trust with our clients and inside the organization? Do what you say you're going to do. And when you're asking for something, be really crystal clear about when you need it. This is one of the important things I want for your listeners to take away. This is their little tip. Right now, the language of work is ambiguous, and we are all drowning in a sea of ASAPs. Everybody has get me that ASAP, get me that ASAP, get me that ASAP. And then I go, well, John, he's hierarchically higher than Bill, so I'm going to get John's first, and his ASAP is more important. So then you put out ASAP, and then you're like, when are they going to get it to me? When are they going to get it to me? Well, you said ASAP, so how do you know when they're going to get it to you? You haven't told them when you need it.
Right.
So the most important thing to shift work communication where people feel more, they can plan and they can deliver, is to always say, this is what I need and this is when I need it. And then you have a point of negotiation. I can't get it to you by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Does noon work? Yes, that would work for me. Thank you.
Right.
But ASAP or sometime next week or when you get a chance goes to the bottom of the pile.
Goes to never.
It goes to never. Exactly right.
if anybody
good luck
remembers.
with that. Yeah, good luck with that.
So then we've got these more discrete tasks that we know we're going to have to deal with. What do we do with things like, and I'll say meetings, but just knowing we're going to have to at least have I do a daily stand-up with some of my employees to just make sure their day is on target to start the day and make sure that their list of ASAPs, even if, here, I need to make sure this gets done today, just so we're clear on that. There are things like that where, okay, well, we'll have this meeting and I'm going to think about you're getting rewarded for attending so many meetings or however that may work. But what about the individual kind of infrequent minor tasks such as, well, we need to make sure your email gets responded to. That seems very big and very vague. How do we make people accountable for that?
Well, it's interesting. If you're in a results-only work environment and you email a coworker with what you need and when you need it, and they don't respond, and then you try it again, and you try it again, and they don't respond, that's a performance issue. Because everybody in the organization works together to serve the client. So now I send you emails, John, I need this by this date and this time, and you just ignore me and I do it again. And then I think, well, I'm having a lot of trouble. So I call you, John, are you getting my emails? I need this by this, and I'm not hearing from you, nothing. Then we say you go to the results coach. Hey, I'm having a hard time. I need this information from John. I'm not getting that. So you have to, at some point, alert your coach or the other person's coach that you're not getting what you need for the customer, because that's the work. That's the work. And if I'm your coworker asking for your help and I'm clear about it, why would you not respond? It just doesn't work that way in the culture that's a results-only work environment. It doesn't work that way.
Right. And from a management and results perspective, we're not dealing with, Bill is just not a team player. We're not going at him with what's inside of his head.
Correct.
Which he can even say, Bill, you're not a team player. His response is going to be, I sure am. It's all you jerks who aren't.
Right. Totally subjective, right?
Right.
That's another thing we have to move out of this whole thing, is all the subjective judgment, because I'm going to say I'm a team player and you're going to say I'm not. But what's really crystal clear is you're not responding to my email, and that's the work.
Right. When we can come at them, when behavior X is exhibited, result Y is shown, and this is a problem. Or
Correct.
Conversely, we probably don't want to just go at people with bad news. It's, hey, when you do this, this is good. Thank you. Please keep doing it, is also a great way of, this is a great result. Please keep doing this.
Well, absolutely. And I think one of the things that managers can do too is help people understand how their actions affect the actual work. So, people are asking you for this and you're not delivering it. How do you think that affects our customer? Verbalize that to me, because maybe they don't see how their actions are affecting downstream. So it's not like, well, you didn't email me back, so you're fired. It's let's have a conversation about how this affects our actual customer, because that's why we get paid.
Right.
Not to act like we're a team player. Team player is the behavior of answer me when I email, when I say I need something. That doesn't mean go out to drinks with me. It doesn't mean we have to have lunch every day. It doesn't mean we have to do a team building activity. It means that we care about helping each other for the customer, and we do it.
Jody, I think that is a great summation. I would love to keep talking to you for hours on this, but we have other things to do. Where can our listeners find you, find out more about ROWE?
So our website is GoRowe, GOROWE.com. And they can find out a lot of information there, or email us at info@gorowe.com, info@gorowe.com.
Excellent. We'll have links to that in the show notes. Jody, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's been fun, John.
Thanks so much for listening. You can find more info on us and get your free white paper on client service at 5starcouncil.com. You can get in touch with me at john@5starcouncil.com. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe wherever fine podcasts are found and leave us a review wherever you can.